3D has not been kind to the Castlevania franchise. The 64's outings were less than desirable, and while the PS2 and Xbox titles were certainly a vast improvement, they failed to capture the essence of the original side-scrollers or even the more recent GBA and DS outings. So when a Wii Castlevania was announced, the public was already fraught with skepticism. When they announced it was going to be a fighting game, yeah, you can imagine how well that turned out. I really don't know what the big deal was. I mean, it's not like the Castlevania franchise has never changed genre before, and while I'm not going to outright name the game it took its gameplay from, many would agree it was for the best. So while a fighting game might not have been the most desired choice for new Castlevania, there were some who looked upon it with high hopes. After all, think of the possibilities. But then, the trailer came out.
Servant of Dracula, meet your doom!
I'm not done! If you wish to see the power of the elements, it will be my...
Naturally, everyone had something to say, but even more gave the game a chance, going in expecting a certain something from the game. Most did not get that. Reviews poured in and were generally unfavorable, complaining about many aspects of the game, from the art design to the gameplay. Now, I'm not here to change the mind of anyone who's played the game and hates it, but I do want to address the game's flaws and do let everyone know that, despite it being a rushed exercise in mediocrity, it wasn't that bad. People seem to be used to a certain art style in Castlevania. Even when recent titles abandoned its original artwork for more cartoonish anime style, it was starting to get flack for it. So what did they do for this title? They hired Takashi Obata of Death Note fame to design all the characters. It was almost like a meld of the previous art style, with the more stylized anime art the series had done with Dawn of Sorrow and Portrait of Ruin. Unfortunately, Obata's style looked a bit too familiar for most people. With Death Note's popularity as high as it was, parallels were already being drawn between characters. If they weren't, it was just the drastic changes in design that garnered hate. Simon Belmont looked like Light Yagami in bondage gear. Grant Dynasty went from being a bandana-wearing, knife-wielding pirate to being covered in gauze and using spiked chakrams. I can see where the complaints lie, as this was a pretty drastic change for most of the characters. I mean, the Castlevania fan in me can't see why these changes were even necessary, or why they would hire such a high-profile artist to do the artwork when he would be compared immediately to his previous stuff. But the otaku in me says, Doki doki kawaii neko sugoi desu! But I really don't know when Alucard's design became sacred ground. Sure, he looks different, but I still think he looks cool. Then again, some people say that he should have resembled his original design. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Weep, fanboys. Weep. All in all, don't be shallow about it. Of course, if it's not the designs that pissed you off, it might be the controls. I will admit, the controls take some serious getting used to. I often find myself having to play for a little while just to remember exactly how to play this game, especially after I've been playing a few other types of fighting games. Why? Well, they're different. I don't want to call them bad, or definitely not good, but they are unquestionably awkward. The controls were designed around Wiimote flailing. Swinging the Wiimote acts like pressing the attack button. Basic attack combos are chained together. Instead of having complex button combinations to perform special moves, holding down the B trigger and swinging unleashes one of 4 special moves, depending on whether you're standing, running, in midair, or holding down the button for a few seconds. You can also press A to use the series' iconic sub-weapons. The problem is, it's not executed as well as in games like Bleach Shattered Blade, as flailing the Wiimote gets tiring quickly, so most players find it more ideal to use a GameCube or Classic controller. The problem with that is that the game doesn't really design the control scheme around these different types as much as just reassign the buttons. You still have to hold down a button to do special attacks. This is made worse by the fact that the button you need to hold down is on the opposite side of the sub-weapon button. If they had just made the special move button work independently of the attack button, we'd have the simple freedom to link together attacks and combos that you would have with the original control style. I still find it easier than the Wiimote nunchuck configuration, but it's not much better. While this somewhat ties into art design, there's a bit more to it than that. There's a few iconic characters who've gone over much more than a simple change in art style. Not everyone is affected, though. Trevor's certainly not any different you'd expect him to be. Simon, Alucard, Carmilla, and Dracula don't act out of the norm. Grant, despite his mummy outfit, is actually one of the more enjoyable characters, and talks like what you'd expect from a wisecracking pirate.
So slow. That moss I see growing on you?
I will say I'm not much of a fan of what they did to Death, though. Seriously, what is that? Still, Death's actions and personality are what you would expect from the Grim Reaper.
If you wish for death, here I am.
Yet, the Time Rift plot brings us different versions of some characters, such as a younger Sypha who is still part of the church and not in the hooded cloak she was known for. And then there's...
I may be cute as a button, but I'm tough as nails.
Okay, might as well focus here. This version of Maria is supposed to be 2 years older. That's right, older than her Rondo of Blood counterpart. This is a young girl who's faced the forces of evil head-on, defeated them, and lived to tell the tale. So with these experiences in tow, what is she like in Judgment? A bubbly, clumsy, ditzy girl obsessed with breast size.
They're huge.
Will you stop? These things only get in the way.
How can you say that? Those are a sacred gift.
You know, I could try to defend this one. I could mention it's an oddly common thing in anime that teenage girls have issue with their ongoing development, but this is Maria Renard here. She fought Dracula. You'd think the progress of her chest cushions wouldn't be taking priority. But perhaps she's got a point. Here's Maria in Rondo of Blood. Now here's Maria in Judgment, supposedly 2 years older. Notice anything missing? Sheesh, what the hell happened here? No wonder she's so obsessed with breasts. What's the matter, Maria? Did Drac jack your rack?
Even the vampires are bigger than mine.
But no, I'm not going to defend this. My suggestion? There's a skip scene button. I suggest you use it.
Just because you're hot doesn't mean you can be rude.
Speaking of thinly veiled jealousy of pubescent development, Eric. For those of you who've never touched the Genesis title Bloodlines, Eric was one of the two playable characters, a blonde Spanish nobleman who wielded a lance instead of the series' iconic whip, and also makes an appearance in Portrait of Ruin, where he plays a very important role in the story. Yes, I know his sprite has blue hair in Bloodlines, but it's supposed to be blonde, damn it! His role in Judgment, however, is a strange one. This time he's 15 and little more than a bratty kid with a serious case of
I've been thinking, so long as I have this lance, who needs their
whip envy. Really, this is his entire angle. Nearly every win quote of his involves bragging about his lance or downplaying the power of the whip. Aeon even diverts from his usual time-related puns to point this out to him.
Jealousy of the whip does not excuse your arrogance with the lance.
If he's not harping on about his lance, he's insisting everyone treat him like a man.
You underestimated me. Did you think me a child?
Kid's got some serious issues. So, how do you cope with it? Well, he's fucking awesome. He's obnoxious, whiny, and arrogant, but he'll probably kick your ass. He's got that outright unfair combination of reach, speed, and power, which can drain you of your life if it doesn't knock you off the edge of the map first. So I think he's got a bit of a right to talk shit.
Already over? Well, that didn't amount to much.
Still kinda wanna slap him, though.
Ah, so satisfying.
You know, maybe I'm just reading too much into these characters. Maria isn't being pervy, she's just expressing an innocent curiosity towards her body's changes. Maybe Eric isn't compensating for anything, but merely a spoiled child who's tired of being told his new toy isn't as cool as his neighbor's toy. I'm sure when Eric and Maria finally meet up, there won't be any creepy innuendo, just the simple banter of two children.
Wow, a huge lance!
Before I get into this issue, I want to talk a little bit about a genre of fighters I don't think too many people are aware of. I've usually referred to them as anime fighters, although I've heard the term party fighter tossed around here and there. These party fighters usually aren't tooled around competitive play. Characters in party fighters usually follow popular franchises or anime, where it would be completely illogical from a story standpoint that character A should ever be able to beat character B. Most of them are a weird combination of 3D or free-roaming fighters combined with a flashy 2D fighters, where characters are given overblown powers that can devastate an opponent's life bar in seconds. I can think of quite a few games like this, and are rarely given any attention outside of anime fans and conventions. With the occasional exception like Super Smash Bros., party fighters are not meant to be taken seriously. It's the kind of game where a button masher is just as much of a chance in victory as a skilled player. Balance is never considered, leading to some of the most layered tier lists imaginable. These are games made for pick-up and play purposes with a few friends. As far as I'm concerned, this is exactly what Castlevania Judgment is trying to be. It kinda missteps that, but it's not to be taken as a serious fighting game. Well, how does it fare? For starters, it's an arena fighter. Rather than having a simple background to serve as something to look at, you have fairly open ground arenas laden with traps and items. You press the stick in the direction you want to run, and use attack to break open item containers. The problem here is that the game still tries to be a 2D fighter, with attacks that very easily miss their target and no real lock-on system. While most of the time the attacks try to generally focus on your opponent, but this can prove detrimental when you're trying to open an item container. A lot of times your attempts to regain hearts or health may decide to take a swipe at a nearby enemy instead. Why try to open an item container anyway? Well, in keeping with the theme of Castlevania series, you can obtain and use these sub-weapons in combat. Those weapons change depending on which character you're playing, and you still need hearts to use them. I usually find sub-weapons to be rather useless, but a skilled player can use them to create interesting combos. But why bother to collect sub-weapons when you can obliterate your opponent with a super finisher? Notice that bar on the bottom of the screen? Just like a lot of 2D fighters, depending on how much you attack or get attacked, it'll fill the bar. And, like those games, inputting a special button command will unleash that energy in a highly damaging move. The command you need? Hope you're paying attention.
Know the might of legend. KO. That is the power of a Belmont.
Of course, these attacks are usually easily blocked, and some are more unfair than others. The balance on these moves is completely whacked. Some have a near non-existent hitbox. Some almost zoom in on your opponent and hit them no matter where they stand. Aeon's finisher requires that Aeon stand perfectly still for a few seconds, all while hoping your opponent is nice enough not to try and hit you. Perhaps you can see why this kind of game isn't ideal for competitive play. Finally, the camera is evil. There are random times the camera has a strange need to focus directly on a character's back. An impressive angle for spectators, but you can be sure the players are getting fucked by this dynamic. When it's not randomly flailing about on screen, the camera usually picks a decent spot, but its tendency to change randomly between fights and character position leads to many an unfair defeat.
Me not want to fight. Do not want.
Well, with those major issues out of the way, I suppose I can get back to the game modes. I'll get back to story mode in a minute. First, there's arcade mode, which really should be named Time Attack, considering there was no arcade version of this game, and that's all it really is. 2-round matches with a running counter. Finish it and post your best time. Next on the list is Castle mode, which is similar to the modes in Soul Calibur where you take on opponents with certain match restrictions, but are thankfully spared the overblown story paragraphs that Calibur forces you to skip. In this mode, you select doors and fight matches in them while using the same life bar. Occasionally a door will be a save point which will restore your health and let you save your progress. Certain rooms let you unlock accessories, and finishing the castle with a character will unlock their artwork, voice, and theme song. It's one of my favorite modes in the game, even with some overly frustrating challenges. Since Versus is self-explanatory, I'll move on to Survival, where you fight match after match using the same life bar, getting a bit of health back in between matches. Unlike the survival modes in some games I've played, this one is kinda easy. It doesn't seem like the enemies increase in difficulty at all. Getting a good score will unlock a lot of accessories. Training and tutorials are what you would expect, so I'll move on to... I'm out of modes, aren't I? Okay, this takes me back to story mode. Simply put, it's like arcade mode with one-round matches and no time counter. The matches always start with Aeon, who tells the character why they're here and asks them to fight. After that, you'll get randomly chosen opponents with an occasional story-based opponent, who your character will have a conversation with before the fight. After a few more, you'll have one boss confrontation with a character that's more connected to that character's plot. For example, good characters might fight Dracula or Death, while evil characters might face off against a Belmont or Alucard. After that, story mode ends and you get... nothing.
I accept the soul key. 12 yet remain.
I'm sorry, what? Okay, here's why people think the game's story mode is pointless. In order to get a true ending, you have to finish the story with every available character. Doing this unlocks more and more characters until you finally get this as an ending.
I have the final soul key. They are now all in my possession.
That's right, you have to beat the game 13 times before you can actually beat the game. Oddly enough, as many Judgment reviews out there that bash the game, I've never heard anyone bring this bullshit up. So what's the major difference here? Well, after you beat the original last boss for your character, you'll fight Aeon again, who explains the real reason you're here, which is to defeat the Time Reaper and seal the Time Rift. Since the guy doesn't exactly trust you yet, you have to face him in the Clock Tower stage. This stage is a bit tricky since it's very easy to fall off the edge and pieces of the stage can fall away themselves. Add in the fact that Aeon is now a bit tougher and the fact that the camera hates you. Defeat him and you'll get to face the game's real final boss.
I come from 10,000 years hence.
And my spear will send you right back.
The Time Reaper. The Time Reaper is a giant glowing Grim Reaper, and fighting him is more like fighting the stage than any opponent you've faced. He has several life bars and his attacks can wipe out half of yours. Luckily, he's got a pretty easy pattern, and since it's kinda unfair to toss a boss like this at you just now, I'll talk you through it. His first attack is a simple blockable sword swipe that he'll use if you're close. Block it and hit him a couple times. After that, several dark energy orbs appear randomly around the stage. You can use this time to get hits off on him if there aren't any near you. Block again to deflect the skulls he launches at you, and when you hear a rumbling noise, start running around. Dark energy blasts will appear at your feet, and as long as you're moving, they shouldn't hit you. After that attack, several things might happen. If you're close, Time Reaper might hold you in place with an energy force, which you can break free by wiggling the control stick. If you see him slowly casting energy force, run away from him. If the Time Reaper is getting low on health, he might perform a concussive blast that knocks you to the very edge of the stage, and then fire out a massive laser blast that you can either jump over, or if you're playing as Alucard or Dracula, simply teleport through. Repeat this until he's defeated to get a real ending. Well, by real, I mean some text paragraphs and the ability to play that character outside of story mode. Probably not worth it. Still, I think the Time Reaper is an awesome fight and has one of the coolest songs in the game. Speaking of, I suppose I should finish this out by mentioning something people don't complain about in this game, and that's...
the fucking music! You failed to mention the music!
Yes, the...
What is with you?
Yes, the music. Considered one of the...
Can you review at all?
One of the best parts about this game. It's all orchestral arrangements of classic Castlevania music from the 8, 16, and 32-bit eras. Many have argued that this version of Vampire Killer, here used as Simon's theme, despite Simon having his own already, is the best version out there. The new version of Bloody Tears and Dracula's Castle are epic, and this version of Iron Blue Intention gives a very noble feel to Eric's character. Simply put...
the music is awesome.
Yeah, what he said. I would have liked if this game had done a bit better. Since the game flopped in both the US and Japan, it's unlikely that we'll see a sequel, which is too bad because I'd love to see a version of this game with Charlotte Allen or Soma Cruz. But the existence of an actual decent 3D Castlevania game remains to be seen. At least Lords of Shadow looks promising. But still, I think Judgment gets a bad rap, and I'd encourage a late-night rental with some friends and some drinks just to truly enjoy it. Well, take care and keep riding the magic tornado of peace. You know, I guess I'm kind of glad this game didn't do too well. At least it's not another party fighter in the hands of some uptight fighter players who take things way too seriously. I can imagine how well that would turn out.
Let's play Castlevania Judgment. What's this? No sub-weapons, no super finishers, Simon only, Final Destination.